Hello everyone, I'm the Martian Cherry, and today I'm going to be giving you a guide on the false sun. That's the playable character, not the final boss. Well, not the final boss, but a boss in Risk of Rain 2. Yeah, I wanted to put this out there, and I'm going to explain why in a second. Sorry that it's a PowerPoint and not like a nice video, but I taking baby steps to the world of content creation because otherwise I'll never be brave enough to try. So shout outs to Jorbs, the king of Slay the Spire PowerPoints, and of course shout outs to Simple Flips. Thank you. So why am I making this presentation? Well, the sentiment that I've seen a lot online is this guy feels like a modded character, as if being a modded character is terrible. Thank you everyone who mods this game and gives us lots and lots of replayable fun. But I do understand the sentiment. The sentiment is really just his animations are a little bit wonky, which I think is a design choice more than anything. Like he's kind of taped together. He's an imperfect god, so he shouldn't really look quite as smooth as everyone else. But if you think it can be done better, then that's a fair opinion, but hopefully that isn't going to ruin your perception of the character. And some of the other things that I've seen include I can't focus when I'm playing this guy, or this character is so boring, what is the point? You know, is he a ranged character, is he a melee character? People don't really know. He's kind of dull if you play him wrong, I think. So I kind of wanted to spread some false sun propaganda by explaining how I think you should be playing this character. And for context, I am an Eclipse player. I play Eclipse. So that's my sort of background. I don't really play a lot of like Artifact, Monsoon, or anything, but I mean, I presume the same things would apply, same core concepts would apply. So contents, I'm going to try and keep it quick as I can. Ability recap, I'm going to give explanation of playstyle, item priorities, etc. And of course some general tips and tricks. What I'm not going to do is explain how to unlock him or how to beat the boss. Not in any real detail. If you want to beat the boss and unlock him, you should probably, well, you could use the artifact of command, or you can try looping, although that's a bit risky with the new elite type in the game. So ability recap. Primary skill, Club of the Forsaken. When you start, it's either a swing for 300% damage or a slam, which can go up to 1500% damage. You charge by holding the primary and secondary buttons at the same time. When you start charging, your character will not glow. Until the character glows, your slam will not deal damage greater than a normal swing. It starts glowing at just over 1200% damage. So if you release just as you start glowing, that's how much damage you'll do. Ish. When you see the rings around his wrists or fists fully expand, then he has reached max strength on the slam and he'll deal with the full 1500%. So that's how you know. Look out for those rings. Secondary skill and passive, which I've put together because they're very linked. So his passive is Lunar Tampering. Each unused Lunar Spike gives 5% attack speed and 2.5 armor. Used spikes give 5% movement speed and 2.5 health regen. His secondary is Lunar Spikes. These give stacks of Lunar Ruin, which is a stackable debuff. When an enemy is hit by a spike, they will gain a stack of Lunar Ruin, which will mean that they will take more damage. It's 10% extra damage per stack of Lunar Ruin, so it's pretty nice. The debuff is refreshed when it's applied, so if they go from 7 to 8 stacks, it will refresh the debuff timer. You start with 4 stacks of Lunar Spikes by default, but you can gain more through a mechanic called growth, which I'm going to explain in more detail in a second. But Note that gaining extra stacks via growth does not reduce the cooldown, which is 4 seconds by default. You do not have to hit enemies with the spikes to gain the passive benefits, and this is flat health regen. It doesn't scale at all, so as your max health goes up, this health regen gets less and less impactful. His special skill is Laser of the Father. You can charge it up to 1.5 seconds by holding the button, and then you release the button to fire it. If you fire it before it's fully charged, you will deal minimum damage. If you fire it after it's fully charged, which will be indicated by a flash, you will deal the maximum damage. Holding it for longer will not improve the damage after it's fully charged, so just look for the flash and then you can fire. The cooldown of 15 seconds will only start once you begin firing the laser, not after you finish firing the laser. So in reality, this 15 seconds cooldown is more like an 11-second cooldown. But of course, if you read the text, it will tell you that the duration of the laser increases with growth. So in that sense, it will reduce the cooldown. There is damage fall off to this laser. It appears to fall off to around 50% damage at very long range, sort of scaling in between that max fall off and close range. And you can interrupt this laser if you're firing the laser and want to get out of it with your utility. So if you're firing the laser and you're in danger, you may want to stop firing the laser because it stops you from sprinting and from being able to cast other abilities except for your dash. So it makes you a bit more vulnerable. His alternate special skill, because he has two special skills, is Laser Burst. This lets you fire a piercing laser for 1000% damage, which gives you back some lunar spikes. I should say Laser of the Father also gives you back your lunar spikes. This has a cooldown of 7 seconds. It has a small duration where it will sort of make you unable to act as it fires, but it's not very committal. And there is no damage fall off at long range for this, so that's pretty nice. Yeah, not too much to say about the laser burst. Growth, the jade elephant in the room. So all of these abilities that I've just shown you have this keyword growth, and Gearbox hasn't been nice enough to tell us what it is. Well, effectively it converts max health into ability power. Shout out to League of Legends, terrible game. 4 bison steak, which will give you 25 max HP each, will provide 4 extra stacks of the secondary lunar spikes, 2 extra seconds of your main special Laser of the Father, and 1 extra stack of your piercing laser burst. So if that's equivalent to, of course, 1 fully charged infusion, but this is not a linear process. So while 1, 2, 3, and 4 gets you 1, 2, 3 extra stacks of lunar spikes and will increase your the duration of Laser of the Father, the fifth bison steak gives you nothing. I don't really understand why that is, why they've designed it like that, and then because once you get to the 6th one, it starts helping again. So as before, so it seems to be you get 4 bonuses for the first 4, and then for the 5th little bonus you get nothing. Fair enough, I guess. That's a bit weird, but I guess that's just how it is. Of course, just so you know, personal shield generator does nothing. So despite it being related to max health, this is not related to shield, and indeed the same for barrier, which is of course temporary max health, or temporary health really. So yeah, that's growth. And finally, the utility skill, Step of the Brothers. You dash a short distance, generating an explosion of 200% damage for every enemy hit, and you have 2 stacks of it. This has iframes. It's a very simple ability. It really is just you dash in the direction that you're facing. So you can dash upwards and downwards, and it will cancel your full speed, so it can save you from full damage. And that's really all there is to say about the utility. Nothing special there. So, playstyle and priorities. The main thing to keep in mind is sort of these two main archetypes that I like to think about. So Commando and Huntress sort of deal lots of little hits, which make them good at proccing items. So items like Tri-Tip Dagger and ATG and Electric Boomerang proc more often with these characters because they have lots of hits. Conversely, you have these characters that deal big amounts of damage in one hit. So and to compensate, they have fewer hits. So these characters tend to benefit more from base damage, like crowbars and Kajaro bands. And I kind of think of them as sort of like needle tick characters as opposed to Tri-Tip Dagger characters, although this isn't really true. If you give these characters needle tick, they will usually appreciate it, and vice versa. And similarly, these guys, well, they don't really like Tri-Tip, but give them an ATG and suddenly their big hit can trigger an even bigger hit. So that can be quite nice. But this is just sort of like a general rule of thumb type thing, not like gospel, because nothing in this game is really gospel. Good items are usually good for most characters. So the False Sun is good for both. He has a really good proc chance on this laser, so he can really stack up these needle ticks. He'll proc these items quite a bit. You know, each tick will trigger Plasma Shrimp, for example, and the Scorpion item, the first name of the Scorpion I cannot remember, but the Scorpion, and then the base damage for the base damage archetype, his club. That 15% damage on the max slam is very similar to the amount of damage you would deal with like these guys. I don't know why I'm these guys. I'm not sure why I'm blanking so hard on these words. I really apologize, but you can kind of see that this would work well with Kajaro's bands, for instance, and of course crowbar. Like if this is the first hit on an enemy, that can be quite a good combo. So which special skill? If you couldn't guess, it's the standard. Yeah, the one you get originally, Laser of the Father. This one is really good at racking up these tri-tips and needle tick stacks, and of course triggering other proc chain items. So those are that. Why use the alternative when the alternative's main draw is that it's good at triggering bands, as opposed to this can't trigger the bands. This can trigger bands at long range, sure, but you want to really trigger your bands with your primary anyway, because this deals more damage. That's 1500% damage as opposed to 1000% damage. So that's the main draw, and you know the piercing effect is okay, but it only really feels impactful in a cope run where you're unable to kill enemies, so you're running them in a line behind you where you can just fire the laser through them all. Like, guess what? It's instead of planning to have cope runs, you should just plan to not have cope runs by using a skill that combos better with the items in the game, because you know you're going to get some items in the game, and so if you combo well with all of them in some form or another, like that's going to reduce the probability of having cope runs. So yep, use the default. So bread and butter, stop spamming primary. This is something that I've seen loads of people do when first playing this character and declare this character as boring. So this is really the whole point of the video, charge it up until it starts glowing. When you start glowing, release it to deal big damage. It's not really worth waiting for the max charge. To maximize your DPS, just wait for it to start glowing. Use the primary with bands to clear out groups of enemies. Then you can use your dash or multiple dashes to back off and laser the bigger targets from a safe area. And then you can dash back in while the laser's on cooldown and start bashing with your primary again if it's safe enough to do so. That's the general bread and butter of this character. Dash in, dash out. You can use your spikes on larger enemies to increase the damage they take. That should be obvious. You do that after you dash away to use the laser. But that point around comboing around the timer refresh is quite useful. You want to try to sort of weave in secondary uses in between attacks, because just so you refresh the timer of the debuff on the bigger enemies. So other things to keep in mind: your secondary, when used, will increase your movement speed and regen. So when you spawn in the stage on Eclipse, you start with half health. You kind of want to use your secondary so that you can heal up and of course traverse the stage a little bit faster. You don't need to hit an enemy with the secondary to gain the bonus, so don't look around and like try to optimize that. Just fire it in front of you and get to work. Note that using the secondary will break your red whip though, so if your primary focus is to traverse the stage or to like dodge enemies, don't use the secondary. Just hold off on that while you recover. While you recover to a safe location, and then you may want to use your secondary to increase your regen. When low on health, just dash away, get to a safe space, and then spam the secondary. Always try to keep a dash in your back pocket for a quick escape. That should be obvious, but just in case it isn't, in later, it's not so important in earlier stages, but for later stages, always try to have one on hand. Yeah, you're gonna have to try to get used to using spikes. When to use spikes is like the key thing, so just try to be aware of it, and think about how you're using them. And as you play more of the character, you should get better at doing it, and that can be quite satisfying when it happens. So yeah, general tips and tricks. The primary attack once charged will cancel fall damage. So if you need to fall down, but you don't want to use a dash, or you don't have any dashes, like let's say you get knocked off the stage and you don't have any dashes, you can start charging your slam and use it to save yourself. It doesn't matter where you release the slam. You don't have to release it at the ground. You can release the slam from really high up and you will just not take full damage as you're slamming. So it's really useful for that. There is a pillar skip. Shoutouts to Alias 4242 for the pillar skip. You can just search False Sun pillar skip, or in my case Pilala skip, clearly, to find this. I'll also try to link it in the description and in the little annotation in the top right hand of the video. Thank you, Alias. We all hate doing pillars. Unfortunately, this pillar skip is a bit on the long side. It's 2 minutes 45 seconds of moving around, dodging enemies in this sort of animation. But I'll leave you to do your homework and watch this video. Shoutouts to Alias for sharing this with the community and finding it, of course. The special ability has some shenanigans. If you want to use the laser, you have to release the special button, but if you hold it again afterwards, after you release it, you will never stop lasering until the cooldown refreshes. But this feels kind of cheap and is a bug, so it's up to you if you want to play with it. It's probably not going to last, so yeah, just keep that in mind. Yeah, he's kind of good with the luminous shot. He's as good as any character can be with the luminous shot because he has multiple stacks. You can have 5 stacks of your secondary, fire them all off, and then you suddenly have max luminous shot damage. Of course, luminous shot is flat base damage. It doesn't have any kind of proc coefficient, and it doesn't scale based on the damage that your primary deals or anything. So the damage is gonna fall off late game. Like max stacks, this deals half the damage of your slam to one enemy. It's not super impressive, but it's probably as good as it gets on any character. So that's kind of like nice. And of course, Bison Steak, wow, one of the worst items in the game, if not the worst item in the game, suddenly becomes pretty good. It's a better backup magazine, effectively, because of the growth mechanic. If you cannot remember, I'm going to go right all the way back in this presentation. Every unused lunar spike gives 5% attack speed and 2.5 armor. Used spikes give movement speed and health regen. And of course, you gain 1 lunar spike pretty much for every bison steak. So, that's really good. 1 bison steak gives you 25 max health, 5% attack speed and 2.5 armor, and 0.5 seconds duration on your laser. So that's like plus 12% damage to your laser, 12.5%. So yeah, that's pretty good. And of course, it's attack speed when you want it and movement speed when you want it. So it's almost like it's like a slightly worse mocha. It's like a mocha combined with a backup mag. It's just really good. Well, I say really good. I mean, it's probably not amazing, but it's pretty nice. So, that's really the big advantage of the False Sun, is he uses so many items really well. He utilizes a lot of them really well. So that's kind of like the big takeaway for me for this character, and hopefully for you. There are downsides to the character, and that is primarily that his primary attack makes him a bit vulnerable. He has to get in close and do his little slam to do it. So, but you don't have to get in close. You can just like stand back and use your high damage laser, which from afar, in like high intense situations, or like as you run enemies away from the teleporter, you can still use your secondary and laser to sort of keep up the damage a little bit and to thin the herd. So yeah, really good character. So generally, finally, don't spam the primary, use the charge slam instead. Use spikes at the start of the stage, help traverse and heal on eclipse, and use it in between slams to maximize your DPS and refresh the Lunar Ruin duration. The laser is great with proc items, and the slam is great with base damage, so prioritize what you focus on based on the items that you pick up. And reevaluate Bison Steak when playing this character. Don't resist the urge to instantly scrap it. So yeah, that's my presentation on the False Sun. I hope you enjoyed. This is my first video ever, so I have a lot to learn. I know I have a lot to learn, but I'm excited. Hopefully this won't be the last. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and I'll see you next time. Bye.